Welcome to the Optimal HRV instructional video series. My name is Matt Bennett. I'm a co-founder of Optimal HRV, and in this short training, we'll talk about why HRV is important. This training, you will learn about the relationship between heart rate variability and the autonomic nervous system, how HRV measures the mind and body's ability to handle and maintain homeostasis, and the connection between HRV and mental health. Let's start out with a few definitions. The first is homeostasis. Homeostasis is our autonomic nervous system's ability to adjust to maintain balance between our body state and the environment. And we do this primarily through unconscious functions like heart rate, body temperature, digestion, breathing, blood pressure, etc. We know the autonomic nervous system is connected to 80% of the other systems in our body to really help us maintain balance between our internal states and our environment. Let me give you a simple example to bring this to life. When you're asleep, your body is in a certain state. You have usually lower heart rate, you've got regulated temperature, so your body's in a certain state, and then your alarm goes up and you start to get up and get into your day. Well, obviously, there's a different state of being asleep to being awake. Now, the good thing about our autonomic nervous system is you don't have to think, hey, now I need the energy to get up and brush my teeth. Now I need the energy to commute to work. Now I need the energy to tackle this big project. Your body does that automatically for us. Now, stress simply is a stimulus in the environment that disrupts homeostasis. For example, the alarm that goes off in the morning, right? You're in a state of sleep, alarm goes off, and it's not going to probably overwhelm you with stress unless you've had a terrible night's sleep, but it challenges you to change your state. And then you react to that and get back into homeostasis. Not all stress is bad. There's something called eustress, which is actually good stress. This is stress that wants you want to perform your best at work. You might want to get a personal best in a 5K, those sort of things that really drive us. Eustress usually and most often doesn't have any negative impact on our biology. Other stress, often maybe called distress or strain, really creates feelings of anxiety, maybe exhaustion. And this is where the challenges in our environment, the demands are in the environment, is sort of wearing down our autonomic nervous system's ability to maintain homeostasis. Again, stress inherently is a call to change your state. When we see the negative impacts of it, we're having more and more trouble making those necessary changes. Again, leading often to anxiety, depression, or just a lack of energy or exhaustion. Next, let's look at how the autonomic nervous system helps us to maintain homeostasis and also accounts and can be measured by heart rate variability. So when we talk about the autonomic nervous system, there's really two major parts we can focus on. The first is the parasympathetic system, often called the rest and digest parts of our nervous system. It's the calming part of our autonomic nervous system. Obviously, as you see here, highly correlated with digestion as well. The sympathetic is really the energy center of our autonomic nervous system. It gives us the energy to get out of bed in the morning, give our best self at work. So these two systems are always active, and we can measure this partly through an aspect in our breath called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Every time we inhale, we activate the sympathetic nervous system and our heart rate increases. But obviously you don't want your heart rate to increase indefinitely, so when we exhale, we apply what's called the parasympathetic brake, and it slows our heart rate down. Inhale, it speeds up. Exhale, it slows down. So what is this demonstrating? One is the sympathetic activation is showing that we have the energy that we need to be successful and react to stress and maintain homeostasis. The parasympathetic says, hey, I've got the rest, the emotional regulation also there to be successful as well. So you've got this nice balance between, again, the calm part of your nervous system and the energy. And so the energy and the calm creates that variation. And we can measure this again through heart rate variability. So the higher the heart rate variability, it shows this great balance between the sympathetic sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. In other words, my body is either recovering from stress well or reacting to the stress, and either or I'm maintaining homeostasis. Now, as we start to get stressed out, we'll often get overly activated in our sympathetic nervous system. This can lead to higher levels of anxiety, nervousness, anxiousness. At the extreme level, it can result in the fight or flight response. That the flight is energy is all given to get away from the stressor. Fight response, we actually go towards and engage what's causing us stress. If we continue to experience high levels of stress, we can also then reactivate the lower part of our sympathetic nervous system in our gut, which is responsible for a shutdown or freeze response. So shutdown can happen when we just have had that sympathetic system activated for long periods of time. We become exhausted and we start to shut down. We have lower heart rate, lower breathing, and we're just exhausted. During trauma, we can enter a freeze response where we almost enter a comatose state, and we can actually, in extremes, disconnect mentally from the world around us. So we sort of have this ladder as first is the sympathetic and then parasympathetic activation. Now, even though sympathetic increases heart rate, which decreases variability, also the shutdown, even though our heart rate will drop, we can measure this with less variation. So if our heart rate variability is lower than normal and we feel anxious, our sympathetic system is probably overactivated. If we're feeling exhausted, it's probably showing that the lower part of our parasympathetic is overly active as well. One of the big findings with heart rate variability, if you think about how connected the autonomic nervous system is, this should not be a surprise, is that drops in heart rate variability are correlated with 9 out of 10 leading causes of death in the United States. And so what we see when we're constantly trying to struggle to maintain homeostasis, again, we'll have more sympathetic activation, we'll have more of the stress hormone cortisol in our system, which can be good because it gives us energy in the short term, but long term can become toxic. Also, the immune system functioning in our parasympathetic starts to struggle, so it really opens up the window for disease and illness to come in. So what we see is that over time, we become much more vulnerable when we're trying to deal with stress to these. Also, if we get something like influenza, pneumonia, we're also seeing this with COVID-19 coming out of the research, is diseases like that will obviously put stress on our autonomic nervous system, being reflected by a lower heart rate variability as well. So again, long term, if we see lower heart rate variabilities, we're seeing less than adequate functioning of our immune system. It also can be a sign that we might be struggling with one of these issues. Now, 1 or 2 lower scores, not that big of a cause of concern. When you see weekly and monthly scores declining significantly, that's just might be when you want to reach out to your medical provider to go in and get checked up. The other exciting thing about heart rate variability is its connection to mental health. We've talked about the impact of stress and also trauma. Stress challenges homeostasis. Trauma is just such an overwhelming amount of stress, is it knocks us out of homeostasis, usually for a period of time where we're in that fight, flight, or shutdown. Often also we call in trauma the freeze response. So what we see is, again, heart rate variability is a great way to measure not just the impact of severe stress or trauma on our autonomic nervous system, but also our recovery process after that stress or trauma has left our lives. We also see a big connection between HRV and emotional health. So obviously we talked about overactivation of the sympathetic associated with a lot of anxiety disorders. If we see a lower heart rate variability, also a sign of potential overactivation in the parasympathetic, which can lead to depression and other things as well. So just as the autonomic system is key to our physical health, it's also a reflection of how our brain is doing in our mental health as well. Both with emotional health and cognitive health, there's an area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex right here in the front of your brain that is central in both helping to regulate our emotions, but also problem solving, cognitive ability, intelligence, what we need to succeed, whether it's academically or at work as well. And really what we see is studies have shown a high heart rate variability means not only are our emotions regulated, but also we have the cognitive ability to bring our best intellectual selves to the challenges in our environment and in our work as well. The final piece we see is the connection between HRV and social health. When we're emotionally regulated, when we're cognitively active and sharp, we can connect with people, we can provide empathy, we can communicate effectively, teamwork goes up, social engagement goes up. When we see stress starting to impact our system, we'll often have more conflict with people and not be able to connect in the same way. So again, when we look at HRV, we can see what biology it measures, and as time has gone on over the last several decades, tons of studies have come out to show not only a connection to our biological health, but also our mental health as well. Thank you for joining us for this quick training. You can find more about us at optimalhrv.com, where you can find more online trainings, our heart rate variability podcast, and our free ebook, Heart Rate Variability. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at sales@optimalhrv.com. Thank you very much.